Hey, once again, this is Brad from Heaven's Metal Magazine. Hey, what if I told you there was an artist out there that took the best of Korn, Evanescence, Spearbox, Flyleaf, even a little Rob Zombie, put them in a blender? Would you all be interested in hearing something like that? How about an exciting young artist who uses her music and her amazingly creative videos to take us through her life's journey? It's a story of loss and suffering and redemption. Would you all be interested in that? Well, I tell you what, I talked to a relatively new artist named Zahna. She's been releasing material for about the last 5 or 6 years, and she just dropped a new single called Pile of Pills, and it is her debut release single on Brian Head Welch's new label, Crossover. So I had a great conversation with her last Friday. So I present to you the exciting Zahna. Hey, everyone from Heaven's Metal. This is Brad, and we're here talking with Zahna. And Zahna Madsen, is that your last name? Zahna Madsen?
Yes. My married last name, yes.
Fantastic. That's right. You've been married. How long have you been married now?
We just hit 6 years of marriage, October 13th. So yeah, we're on 7.
That is fantastic. Hey, so Zahna, why don't you kick it off by telling us a little bit about yourself? Give it a little bit about your background, your bio, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Zahna, based off my name, Susana. I was born in Mexico, and my parents came to the United States with a job offer for my dad, and a lot of my childhood was actually living in northern United States, Ohio. And so I really became very Americanized, and my dad decided to send me back to Mexico for a year after we moved down to Texas. And he's like, you're going to relearn all your Spanish. So that was a really awesome thing for me to do, where that's kind of where I gave my life to the Lord for myself when I was living in Mexico, kind of by myself with one of my aunts as an exchange student. But I ended up being one of the hardest years of my life and one of the best years of my life, because I was just a kid learning about the world and seeing what my homeland was actually like after living in a bubble in a perfect childhood, basically. And so I just started having big questions about life, and I came to read the Bible and give my life to Christ, and that, depression left me, and a lot of my questions were answered that day of just like existence and my purpose. And I just felt like when I was reading the Bible, like those pages came out to me. I felt like Jesus was calling me. Every time I read about calling disciples in the kingdom of heaven, I felt like he was calling me through those pages. And so when I got back to the States, I got really plugged into churches and started walking with the Lord. I started just to really build up some musical gifts, and started to kind of figure out what God wanted me to do with my life. And I just loved ministry so much. I ended up going to Christ for the Nations Institute in Dallas, Texas, and furthering just this relationship with God, and ended up getting an opportunity to audition for a band called Ilya after that. And it was crazy because I had started to feel this stirring in my heart to go back to music, even though I felt the Lord, tell me to drop it for a couple years and just to go to seminary school. And when I was nearing the end of my last semester, I just was starting to just get this change of heart and prayed a lot about it, and I felt released to just pursue music. And then I got this audition with Ilya, and I ended up making it. So I entered my first professional band and started touring after that. And 3 years of that, just learning the ropes of how to be in the bands and shows and touring, and just was real green. And after that, we ended up parting ways in that band, and I decided to go solo and just use my normal name, Zahna, as my project. I was able to release 2 2 albums under that name, and I'm working on my 3rd. And it's just been a journey, man. I've just been able to talk to so many people and use a lot of that Bible degree to just evangelize and just talk to people. And so really it's living the dream. It's the best of all the worlds. And we're just trying to make this next album as big as possible and go to new places with our message. And it's very exciting. I just signed a record deal with Brian Welch's record label called Crossover Records. And so that's been kind of the biggest news lately, and have a new album in the works, and I'm very excited to release it next year.
You said Ohio. Where in Ohio did you live?
So a few years in Euclid, and then we moved to Chesterland. So both of them are kind of outskirts of Cleveland area.
Yeah, because I'm in Cincinnati. So.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I love Ohio, man. Touring up there just makes me so happy because the way it looks, like the trees, the grass, like just something about the nature there is like specific to Ohio. So I really miss it.
Yeah, especially right now, the leaves are all changing and it's really good. So
I love this time of year in Ohio, and all the festivities at school and like the costumes, the Halloween and the parties. And like I didn't really get to celebrate Halloween, but I remember like the pumpkin patch and the orchards and stuff. And it was just such a beautiful childhood.
Yeah, all the fall festivals and all that fun stuff. So, I was watching your interview with Head Welch, and you were mentioning some of your influences. So I have a son who is in his 30s, and he is a worship pastor in a church in Kentucky, but he was in a hardcore metal band for years. And I have a feeling you guys listen to a lot of the same music.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because you were mentioning like Seosin and Evanescence and bands like that. Yeah. And so those bands were playing in our house a lot. So
yes. Yeah. There's probably so many more just being put on the spot. You're like, I can't think anymore. I don't remember anything I've listened to because you're on the spot. But yeah, I really loved like emo bands. I loved Silverstein. They weren't Christian, but something about just their guitar riffs and their writing and the clean singing, the screaming was just everything I was attracted to in music. I still kind of have that pattern, like heavier riffs with really melodic, catchy choruses, and then you have to have that heavy edge to really bring it home. So that's kind of just guided my musical taste as time has gone on.
Yeah, he's actually the one who introduced you to me, my son. He called me up and said, "Hey, Dad, you've got to check out the production on this album." And it was Stronger Than Death. And we're both big music nerds. And so I put it on. The production on it is incredible. Now, did you work with Josiah on producing that album? Was he the main producer on that?
I'm sorry, on which album? One more time?
Stronger Than Death?
Actually, Kellen was, Kellen McGregor from Memphis Mayfire was kind of senior producer there. Josiah and I wrote 2 songs for that album, Die for Something and Anything But Destiny at the very end of that. So everything else is pretty much Kellen and then Patrick, my husband, and I collaboration. And then I have 2 songs with just me and Josiah as writers. Yeah.
Yeah. And Die for Something. I think that's my favorite song on the album. I love the way Reaper just like goes right into that. So that. Yeah,
we didn't even mean to do that. Like, actually, I lied. Josiah did do that track. He was like, "Hey, I have this idea for an intro for Die for Something," and I was like, "Okay, I kind of like this," So I actually didn't write that interlude of Reaper, but Die for Something we both heavily collaborated on, and I remember like we were doing a Skype writing session. Back in like, what was this, like 2020, I think, because that's when we were writing actually Stronger Than Death. It didn't come out till like 23. But he was like, "Well, I have this idea that I was going to give Kevin, from Disciple. I was going to let him write it. But now I think it kind of fits more for you." And then it ended up being Die for Something. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm taking this one." Okay.
Oh yeah.
And so he let me kind of just write all the verses and the pre-chorus and the bridge and everything. I remember he was like pretty excited when I gave him the bridge idea I had. He's like, "Whoa, this is really cool." And it's such an kind of an unconventional structure. But I was literally listening to it the other day, just because I was putting it on one of my stories. I'm like, this is a really good song. Like, why don't I listen to this song more?
It is.
And you're just so busy to move on to the next chapter. Like, you don't really sit and be like, wow, that album was really good. And it's still holding up. Like it hasn't even been 2 years and it already hit like 3 million Spotify streams. and then 8.5 million combined. And I was just like, I don't think I ever in my wildest dreams thought I would get 3 million Spotify streams, much less a million. I was just like, I'll be happy if I maybe make $1 million in like a couple years, because that's what Red for War did. Red for War hit 1 million like 4 years in, I think. And I was like, okay, that's cool. At least I have 1 million, And then this one, probably in like, I want to say 10 months of being out, it hit 1 million, and it just kept going and going. Or was it 2 million in 10 months? I can't remember. It was something astronomically soon that I did not expect. And probably like 6 months in, that's what it was. But it was just like such a surprise. And I remember like going through such deep depression with Stronger Than Death, because I had to put it out all by myself from my couch, and it costs a lot of money to make records, or a lot of like loans or something you would need. And that's why it took so long for me to come out with it, because I needed literally like tens of thousands of dollars to do it. And it was like in the middle of a pandemic, and I have a lot of overhead and bills with like health insurance and medications. And I was like, man, I don't know if that process just like shaved more years off my life, because I was so stressed out at certain points, just trying to pay for everything, and kind of not sure if I would ever be able to do another record after it, because it was killing me, just working 3 jobs to try to make this happen without a record label. And a lot of depression, a lot of questions, and a lot of like timing, and just being like, God, like I thought this was what I was supposed to do, and it's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And you face a lot of discouragement that way, but I'm really happy that it ended up being the way it did, because I learned so much about putting out a successful album, and I really invested in myself to learn all the tips and tricks of what works. And so, and the rewards are super awesome, because now I own the masters of that album, and I am actually able to pay back my debt, that I took for this album. And, I'm just, there's no bigger flex than that. You're just like, I did this, and I'm reaping the rewards. And coming from, people always kind of like taking bits of your career throughout your life, whether it's your band or your previous record label, like no one can claim stake to this album, because they had nothing to do with it. And, you get that satisfaction that like it was worth it. And so I'm really proud of that album. And I really believe that this next one tops it in writing. And that's like, hard to say, because I love Stronger Than Death, but this new one, I think that people are really going to love, and it's going to have a heavy element that was, that I got feedback from fans that was kind of lacking in Stronger Than Death. Great, clean singing album. But I wanted to do more screams, and my producer was like, no, let's just make you more mainstream. And then everybody started being heavy again. And I was like, I wish I would have stayed heavy. But it's okay. We just put out a song called Pile of Pills, and I got all of that rage out with that song. So.
Yeah. I was going to go into that next. So I'm seeing a definite evolution in your sound, and Pile of Pills was kind of surprising for me. I loved it. I mean, I love it. It's super heavy, but you're right though. A lot of the groups are going more that direction, what's the shoot? Now I forget that. And I'm drawing a blank. There's another band that does kind of the same thing, and they're kind of big. Spirit Box. Yeah. Spirit Box.
Yeah.
Spirit Box kind of takes that same approach. Now I like you're more mainstream and like that 4/4 standard metal crunch. Spirit Box tends to be a little more proggy, And I love progressive music.
I love Spirit Box. I just hung out with them at the Korn concert on Sunday when Brian took us backstage, and like it was so cool, Brad, because Pat and I, we got to go backstage. We literally had an in-ear mix. We heard all their band chatter like before the show, and like I just heard their tracks, and I heard how she was singing, and it was just like it was really awesome. And what I put together was a year ago, me and Pat went to the Cynthia Wood Pavilion, which is our Houston concert venue, a year ago to see Shinedown, Papa Roach, and Spirit Box. And then I couldn't believe that literally a year later, we're backstage hanging with these people. Life is so weird. Life is so weird. And I remember like watching Spirit Box a year ago, and we were out on the lawn, and we were just like, me and Pat were just like trying to enjoy our anniversary. And the Lord, I think he gave me a message, and I'm pretty sure it was his voice. And that specific day, like our bed frame broke. And I was really stressed out about it. And I was like, oh, I don't want to pay for another one. I can't afford this right now. And I remember watching that concert, and through my head, I felt like the Lord was telling me the bed frame was a cymbal breaking. And I felt like he was telling me everything that makes you comfortable, I'm about to break. I'm about to like make way for the new. Like just everything I'm about to do in your life right now is going to break the comfort of what you're used to. And here I am sitting on the lawn and just like, man, I wish I could do that one day, what they do. And I just love music so much. And I remember just like this urge after that last year's concert happened. And I just had this like desire to purge my house, just clean it and make way for the new. And it was like the symbolic thing that I felt like the Lord was telling me to do. And a few months later, I remember just being at this low because I'm like, Stronger Than Death is out. It's doing well. But like, I don't know what to do. I don't think I have the strength in me to put out another album right now, dude. Like, I need a season of rest. Like, please. You know, I did what I did. It cost me 3 years of my life. And I just, Lord, just help me know what to do next. Because if this is my last record, so be it. I can't do this again on my own. And in December of 2023, we got a call from Crossover Records and they're like, hey, we really like your stuff and we're really interested in talking with you. And it took about 2 months after that to actually get in talks like fully. But I remember like the first call went really, really well. And me and Pat were like, we can't believe this. Like it hasn't even been a year. And this album and like people, like we're talking to Brian Head Welch's camp. Like this is so cool. And I don't know. I think about that all the time. I think about what the Lord told me. And it hasn't been easy still at all. It's still come with its own suffering and hardship and like trust in God. And, you know, but it's like, I truly believe that like the process is the whole point of it. You know, like if you really want to do these things in the world and you want to allow him to come and anoint you for such a thing, like you have to go through the battle. You like, there's no other way. Right. And you have to like beat the ego, beat yourself at it. And otherwise he can't put new stuff in you. Like you have to be out with the old. And so I learned a lot through that. And I can't believe just a few days ago, we were literally behind stage, literally just from the opposite end. Like, how is it? Like only God can do that. Like only God can take someone that no one knows or cares about and just let them open the doors and just go through these places. So I just feel like, man, no matter how many times I doubted the Lord on the way, like I can't say he's ever failed me. I can't, you know, it was never easy, but he really never has failed me. And even in days of doubts, like I think about that and I'm like, you know, I struggle with a lot of health problems and there's always a voice in my head that's telling me I'm going to die before I live to my potential. I'm going to die, you know, or the pain is too much or the emotional pain that I've been through is too much. And then I remember that that's what I had to go through to write this music. And that is the yoke of anointing is like, you have to go through that stuff to be anointed to talk about it. And so, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's too spiritual, but that's where I'm going.
You're not going to get too spiritual with me. That's fantastic. You mentioned your health journey. If you don't mind, if you don't mind sharing, what happened? Tell me that whole story, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that is influencing what you write. Like you're working through your therapy is writing lyrics from what I can tell. So take me through that whole story. So just to address the health issues. So in 2016, I had met Patrick, my now husband, and the previous year and that same year, I actually lost 2 people that I knew really suddenly out of like random illnesses. Like they were perfectly fine and the next second they were just gone. And one of them was she went through a septic infection and she just passed away in 24 hours. And I had just seen her the night before. And another one was a high school friend of mine who had a blood clotting condition she didn't know. And it was just so tragic because like,
it was a month before her wedding that she passed away. She got a blood clot in her lung and just like passed away like so suddenly. It rocked the community. And I remember meeting Pat and I was like, oh, I think that might be the guy I end up marrying. But like, what if I die? Like this fear of death I had seen it happen and take people away so instantly. It really freaked me out. And my whole life I had this like phobia of needles and hospitals and doctors. Like I literally would pass out of fear. Like I would just start hyperventilating so much, like there would be too much oxygen in my brain. I would just go. So, my mom always had to like be there to hold me ready to catch me if I passed out. And so I had like this insanely deep-seated phobia of hospitals and doctors, which is why I didn't go for like 10 years. I hadn't been to the doctor. And those two instances or three instances, meeting Patrick and like seeing those two people pass away, really like jarred me to the point where I was like, I should get tested just in case. I haven't been a doctor in forever. I don't really know where my health is at. I feel fine, but I ended up going. My sister's actually one, and she was the one I felt comfortable with. She came back with my blood tests, which were so hard for me to do because the needle it just freaks me out, man. Like I can't. It grosses me out. And somehow I got through that, I think just out of fear and peer pressure for myself, and she said, hey, this level doesn't make any sense. I need you to come back and repeat labs. And the same thing happened. It was my creatinine levels, which tends to indicate something wrong with your kidneys. And everybody knew, like they ended up doing a whole renal panel on me. And they're like, oh, your kidneys are only like functioning at like 47% right now, and that was like, wait a second, that's less than half. What are you talking about? Like, why are my kidneys failing? I'm 24 years old. Like, what do you mean? And kidneys are really resilient. So like you don't really feel them go down until like the very end, and you'll have symptoms with that. But I do remember I was anemic and fatigued, but like around the time of 24 is when they started doing all the pathology and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And they ended up putting a genetic test on me that showed a marker for what's called medullary kidney disease, which is basically just a genetic disease you're born with that your kidneys don't produce a certain protein. And over time, that protein, the garbage that protein is supposed to break down, it accumulates and it just scars your kidneys and damages them. And it takes about 20 years for it to kill them all the way because kidneys are resilient organs. And so I had this whole disease, and my whole life I was dying and I didn't know it. And when you're told that after your band just let you go, and you're in this really sensitive time of confusion in your life, and you experience some betrayal in the music industry, and you're just freaked out, man. And again, this was my worst fear, mind you, like just understanding that I was going to have about to have a lot of medical intervention, which was my absolute own personal hell, and the first time where, they told me I had low kidney function, I was just crying. I didn't understand. It took them 6 months to tell me it was a disease. They told me that you need to have kids now because you don't know if you're going to be healthy enough later. And it was so overwhelming. And at the same time, I'm like trying to process my band breaking up and me just being angry as heck, like wanting to go write about all this on a new album. And the fury actually made me follow through with my solo project, Zahna. Like I was so angry at life at that point, that I had spent 3 years of my life just touring and giving my all to this band for them to let me go. And then like also going through this personal hell with my health and having like no money because I was on the road for like 10 months that year and I have nothing to show for it. Like I was just at the bottom, man. And it was really scary. And so they told me it was going to take a while for my kidneys to die. It told me it'd be about like 5 years. And so it ended up being like 3. And I remember just like I got married in 2018. And right after that, my kidneys just started to tank and like record pace. And I just remember being so sick. Like I was sleeping 12 hours a day. I could only really be like active 4. I remember like I would work all day and then go to the gym and be fine. And like it was coming to the point where like work was just too exhausting. I could not take myself to the gym anymore. I started seeing this decline of energy. I started getting randomly nauseously sick. And lo and behold, yeah, my kidneys are about 20%, and everybody expected to take longer, and it just didn't. And in hindsight, I'm really grateful for that, because it turns out that my kidney failed in 2019. Like spring of 2019, and I was hanging on by a thread, dude. I was like, please let me I don't want to go on dialysis. It's going to be so much worse. And I got the transplant in June of 2019, like 6 months before the pandemic hit. And a lot of surgeries were put on hold. So I'm glad, in hindsight, I'm glad they failed sooner than later, because the world was a mess after that. And so, yeah, I did the kidney transplant. My mother was my donor. There was so many tests and things I had to do. It was so invasive. I remember I was on tour that spring too, right? I was going to finish my tour because I just put out my album in August of 2018, and I had to push records. I had to go and tour, even though like my physical condition was so bad. And I remember it was winter, and I was feeling the cold in my bones. Like I had enough strength to perform one day, and then I was absolutely trashed the rest of the day. I had to sleep a lot, and just like the mental anxiety of coming up to my own personal hell, where I knew I was going to have a central line, which is an IV in your neck. I was going to have a ton of invasiveness, like everything that you like. The worst fear that you have, imagine you have to sit in it for like 2 weeks, like you just have to like be tortured mentally by it. So I didn't do very well. They almost didn't give me the transplant because I passed out at the transplant center. I just got too nervous. It was just a mess, man. I tried so hard to control my fear, but I knew that if I didn't get this surgery, I would end up on dialysis and I would never be able to tour again. And so it was worth it. Like to me, it was literally do or die. Like if you're gonna do your dream, you have to go work through your absolute worst fear. And I did. And there was a time of depression after that, because I didn't feel better after my transplant. I got incredibly sick for like 6 months straight. I had 4 to 5 hospital visits after. I had to get admitted again because I kept getting infections, and it was just never stop. It was never stopping. And after that, as soon as I started feeling better in January of 2020, I was 4 dates into my tour again to try to push my album again. And 4 dates in, they shut down the country, and I'm back home. And I just couldn't. I couldn't win. There was no way I could win in music anymore. And so it was, my health stuff. I still have repercussions from that. I do have to take medication for the rest of my life. I do get way more sick than the average person. And I've learned a lot about sickness. I've learned a lot about death. I've learned about wanting death. I've learned, that dying is easier. It's always easier, but like living is actually the hardest part. And we have to, as Christians, stay in the game. We have to live our life because it is a gift from God. And suffering is also a gift from God. And I think that me getting sick really put me on a different trajectory, just completely. I mean, going through a life-saving transplant just will really do a number on someone, especially in the instances that I was in with my phobia and everything, and just my unique like career path. It was just crazy.
Well, that's kind of an awesome story. That is fantastic. You've got, at a very young age, you've got an amazing testimony. And it's a little too much. I don't like it sometimes. I'm just like, why did I have to go through that? But think about, though, the impact you're going to have on people. You've signed with Crossover now. You've got the backing of, Zoom. Not Zoom. Forbes magazine just released an article, the top 30 metal bands of all time, and Korn was in there. Mm-hmm. So you've got the backing of Brian Welch. That's something that's pretty amazing.
It's pretty mind blowing, man. Yeah. Like I just in that interview when he interviewed me as a new artist, like he's literally telling me he's fangirling over me, and I'm like, I can't compute. Like, do you know who you are, bro? Like, you're telling, nobody cares about me, dude. Like, it's just wild, man. And like, I just feel like God sees all of us like that. Like, we're all rock stars in his eyes. Like, we all have this amazing story that like he wants to use and utilize. And he sees us when no one else sees us, and I don't think I'm anyone that important. I think I'm a gifted songwriter, but like, like it takes so much to just be recognized because there's so many good people out there. And there's times I just feel honored. And the thing is, though, I coach a lot of artists and bands and stuff, and they're just like, you got all this stuff. I was like, you don't see the other side of the coin, dude. Like, you do not see the struggle and the suffering it was to get here. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's almost like the path that you want with God is going to be like that. Like, you will not get promoted by him until you battle your fears. Literally battle them to either they're going to finish you or you finish them. And that is the battle of this life, is that we are called to crucify the flesh, crucify the fear, the anxiety, and trust in God and God alone. So promotion, I feel, comes with the process. And if you're asking for promotion, if you want that, you will be challenged and tested to the limits of yourself. And so a lot of my new album is kind of about that. It's about the killing of the flesh. It's about every time you compromise on the altar of what is right or wrong, like you are aligning yourself with that power. Okay. You do. And there is a spiritual realm. Okay. And what I really noticed about God and Satan is that Satan will give you everything and take it away at the end. And God will take everything away and give it to you at the end. And that is the absolute difference of how they operate. And it takes faith to believe that God's suffering is actually goodness in disguise. Okay, I know that's like a really maybe a controversial statement, but the Bible says, count it all a joy when you suffer, brothers. Okay, it is purifying your faith. And it's so opposite to what the world says, which is, love yourself and just give yourself whatever you want, be happy. And happiness is important, but peace is more important. And happiness is fleeting, but peace and serenity and knowing that, you're not in control, God is the most peace you can have. It's not all about you. And if you want to be used by God, you recognize that very quickly, that your ego is the first thing to die.
Yeah, I saw what was it? A guitar player, Nita. Are you familiar with Nita Strauss? Female guitar player. Mm-hmm. plays with Alice Cooper. She wears a T-shirt I love. It says, "Ego kills talent."
The drummer of Korn was wearing a shirt that says "Kill your ego," and these people are like in the highest of places, and they know, and I feel like that's the only thing that saves you when you're in this realm of people that are, there's a lot of corrupted people in the music industry, a lot of people trying to take advantage of you. Now we're, seeing everything with P. Diddy coming out, and you're just like, man, the exploitation, like I've experienced a fraction of exploitation. It is horrible. It's horrible. Anyway, but
from what I can tell, and just a little bit that you've told me, a little bit that we've talked here, I think you've got a strong foundation, and I see you lasting longer than most. You've got you're very well grounded in your walk with the Lord. And we saw so many bands, that a lot of the tooth and nail bands that were Christian. I put that in quotes because a lot of them, they played that game, and they're no longer, and they're not walking with the Lord anymore. And that scares me. So I'm so thrilled to hear your story, and your grounding is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, man, it's I've seen some bands do that, like even bands that I loved. I was like, what are y'all doing now? Like, you literally walked away from God. Like, your music isn't even good anymore either, dude. Like, it's just, we just get so mixed up, and we think that people are in love with us when it's the light of God in us that they're actually attracted to. Okay. And once you understand that, okay, it's very easy to let go of your pride. Because, I would not be here, okay, if this was the Susie show, the Zahna show, and I was suffering this much for myself, bro. Like, no, I'm sorry. I suffered a lot to put this album out. And it's not the me show. I don't care about myself that much to go through this stuff, but at the same time, I do feel that there is something I have to give to the world that comes from God, man. Like, I try to figure out what people with musical gifts have. And you see David in the Bible, and like on his deathbed, he's like, yes, it was by the Holy Spirit I spoke those things. He's talking about his Psalms. He's like, it was by the Spirit of God. It wasn't me. And I do feel like, everybody has this gift. Everybody has some sort of way to connect to God, and gifts that are irrevocable that he gives us. Like I don't have an athletic gift, but I know people that do, that they can do things that like I could never do, and that is the light of God on them. That is their gift. That is their calling. It's irrevocable. Okay. And he'll give us those gifts, and how we use them to serve our own purposes or to give it back to him in worship is where it's at. Okay. So let's some of my songs on my album, people are like, oh, there's no point of like hope in those, or like, especially my new album, it has some like really aggressive songs that to me are part of a bigger picture of the album. And so people see where I was at, what my anger did to me. It did nothing but destroy me. Okay. And I want people to know how dark it was for me. And the whole album is a process of how I got out of that into freedom. And, so yeah, I mean, like, what better way to use the gifts that God gives us in worship back to him in honesty, though, like in honesty. And so I think that is an offering to him. It's a cry out. It's a worship song to him. As long as there's honesty and truth, and you do recognize at the end of the day that I was wrong, Lord, and you can cleanse me and you can sanctify me and you can make me better. I'm going to use those gifts for you. Okay. And if I fall and stumble, even as a Christian, even walking this life, who cares? It's not about me. Who cares? Okay. We all fall. So what? Okay. Move on and keep going in your walk with God. And hopefully you understand the consequence of sin is death. It's literally death. Okay. The Bible is very clear that the wages of sin is death, and we die in our sins. Okay. We're punished by our sins too. Okay. Our anger, like I said, I had a huge anger problem. I talk about rage a lot in my new album, and all it did was destroy everything around me. It didn't do anything for me. And it was my choice to act in anger. And, the spiritual principle is there. Okay. It's not that God's like always like, oh, you defied me, you're going to get punished. It's like, no, because you chose anger, that is what it leads to, is death. And the more you choose that, the more you dig your own grave, because it leads to death. Okay. So the Lord is over here and he's like, choose life, choose me, continue to walk with me. And it's impossible for you not to have life with me. Okay. Because I am life. And you choose my way and you choose the narrow road. It truly does lead to life, though, even though it's hard in the moment. So just like really basic, fundamental spiritual truths, like we have to remember that. And we have to remember that God is love and there is grace. But at the end of the day, we have choice. And we can choose to use our gifts for ourselves or worldly possessions or fame. And at the end of the day, it's empty. And once you get there, you realize how empty it is, and you're off to chase the next thing that satisfies you momentarily. And it never will, just won't. So yeah, don't do it for those reasons.
Yeah, that's great. So I am a video producer by trade. I work for I'm a contractor for the U.S. Air Force. So I do video and animation for them. So of course, I had to go watch all your videos.
Yes.
Okay. So they're great. I love them. Very super creative. Now, are those your ideas on those videos, or how much hand do you have in putting those things together?
Yeah, they're all my ideas. And then I just, I outsource the team that does it. And, I have people that love my ideas, and I just don't know. And maybe I'll let someone else try something for my music in the future. But for me, I always have stories and stuff. And I love filmmaking. I'm not good at the tech side, but I have the ideas. Right. And so I just kind of enlist the crew that I want, and they make it happen based on the treatment I give them and stuff. So it's super fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, because that's such a huge part of music today. If you don't have that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, really. And the new one I love. Took me a while to understand, and it wasn't until I saw your interview with Head that I understood what the song was about.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like if people know what that song's about, they're going to actually like it way more. So
Yeah, it really made me appreciate it. It was like, okay.
That's what Courtney and Mike were telling us from Spirit Box on Sunday. They were like, well, he told us what it was actually about. And we were like, whoa, and I was just like so caught off guard because, they came up at like they had just gotten off stage and we were like, great show, guys. We don't want to bother them because they're probably sweating and tired. But they came up to us. We're like, hey, it's good to meet you. Brian showed you your song. And what was really crazy, we learned what it was about. And I was like, man, like that is my only desire is people understand the weight behind these songs and like what they're actually about, and you look at them completely different.
Well, it makes them so much not heavier as in musically, of course they're heavy that way, but heavy lyrically, and I love that there's thought in them. The one Erase, the lyrics to Erase are just phenomenal. I was sitting there watching the lyric video and was like, this is like, it's poetry.
Thank you.
And it's great because so many. My wife is a singer too. Now she doesn't sing rock music. She does a lot of stuff with worship band at church. And so we listen to a lot of worship music, and a lot of that it's great, but it's not about the struggle. And your music addresses the struggle that Christians go through, that we go through every day. And it keeps it real.
It does, man. And it's just, there's so much suffering and darkness in this world. It is a reality of our life. And the more you acknowledge that, the more also real God becomes to you. Because when you see evil and you see what it looks like and you experience a taste of it and you realize you're in bondage and you're just like, oh my God, thank God there's a God. Thank God. Okay. Like, there's people angry with God and they just think that denying his existence will make them happy or something, but they don't know how to work out those feelings they have towards God. And I was very angry at God when I found out I had a disease. I was like, what the heck? Why? What? This is literally my worst nightmare. How could you do this to me? Like, this is part of my genetics, And what I ended up learning was actually one of the biggest spiritual lessons I've ever learned is that, this disease in me was genetic. Okay. I was born with it and I had no idea. I was already afflicted from the start. And I started to see the disease as a picture of sin, and that all of us are literally inherently like, that's our nature. It's our nature to sin and be attracted to dark things. Okay. And the same way my mom had to give up herself, her body, her kidney, so that I could live, was literally the picture of what Christ did for me so that I could live in him. Without that sacrifice, I would have been done for. I would have died. There would be no one to help me, okay? Like, modern medicine can't fix everything, Or I would have lived a half-life with just like a zombie with needing dialysis every 4 days a week, just living just in fatigue and just a half-life, And it really, really opened my eyes to the spiritual truth of that, like, we cannot save ourselves. Okay? And it's literally by the grace and the gift of Jesus Christ that we have this adoption from God. Like, we literally, the Bible says we can come boldly into his throne room as if we're spotless, we have this like royalty about us. Okay. And in Colossians, it talks about, who are you? You're mindful of man, why, Lord? And it's just like, man, it's the wildest thing that the gift of grace, the gift of like the significance of what Jesus did on the cross. It cannot be overstated enough, And we all will meet our maker at the end, okay? We really all do. And we will have to give an account for why we were so stubborn and prideful. We didn't even accept that there was a free gift of salvation the whole time. It was free. All you had to be was like, yes, Lord, thank you. I accept it, and Jesus is your son, and that's it. And the Holy Spirit will walk with you, and you're going to walk it out. Okay, but if your heart is that hard that you literally reject the only thing that could have saved you, all you had to do was accept it. And you were that hard-hearted that you were like, I don't need you, God. Well, that's very bold of you. Let's just say that's very bold of someone. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know.
You mentioned this spiritual lesson that you learned. Also think about the love your mom had for you, that she was willing to do it. And she probably didn't bat an eye. I mean, I'm a father of three.
She wanted it to be her. She was so relieved when both her and my dad tested first. They were the main people that tested. And then my dad was not a match because he wasn't my blood type. My mom was happy about it though, because she wanted to be the one.
Right. Sure. And Jesus felt the same way. Yeah. God the Father felt the same way. He loved us so much that it was like, I'm going to do this. It's the only way.
Yeah. And I saw like a video of like a simulation of what the whipping was like for him. Oh. And it was just like computer graphics, but like how it lashed into his back and like 40 times, dude. And it was like the simulation was the person basically had no back anymore. They're just shredded. Yeah. And then like the way that he like had to lift the cross on that back and march and walk. And then crucifixion is just like so vile because like they'll hang you on the cross and you have to like push yourself up to breathe or else you suffocate slowly. So it's a very like slow death. They whipped him like crazy beforehand. Like he's literally in the garden praying, Lord, like, I'd rather not do this, but if it's your will, then help me drink this cup. Okay. And I remember like thinking like, why did it have to be this way? Like, why did I have to go through this suffering? Why did I have to like almost die a couple of times to the point where I wanted to die because I was in so much pain, and I still get that anxiety when I get sick because I get sick more often with my immunosuppressants. And this fear comes over me that like, I'm not going to make it in time to the hospital for them to save me. And so it just changes the way you walk every day. It makes you really think about things a lot deeper. And I've always thought deeply, but it's at this point where like, you can't deny there's an afterlife. You can't deny anymore there's a spiritual realm. And I don't know, like, I feel like I'm learning fundamentals of spirituality all over again. They still hold the test of time. Like nothing has changed.
Well, it's very real. You've had a peek into that.
Yeah.
More so than a lot of people your age,
Yeah. So it's sad though, too. It's sad that sometimes we're so deceived because our life is just so hard that we're like, oh, it's better this way. It's better to die, and I actually wrote a new song on my album about living with existential dread and just how afraid you are to make mistakes every day. And in the end, it says, I'm so paralyzed to be alive, but crush this desire to die. And it's like, one of my favorite lines in the new album and another one in the same song goes like, this won't take me alive. Give me strength to live life in the pain, in the pyre. I won't be consumed. This doom will never take me alive. And I remember like the pyre is the place where flesh burns. Yeah. And behind that line is like this whole choral chanting, but it's just so wicked. It's over a breakdown. And it's like basically the image of the flesh dying and the spirit bright as the day, like the more the flesh burns, the more the spirit brightens. And like we have authority over our impulses and we have authority over our sinful nature because we let it die, and that includes fear and anxiety and living with dread and, the fear of everyday living. You don't know what's going to go happen in the next year. You don't even know what the election will bring. Like you're so scared that death is around you all the time, but you have to rise up and meet your mortality and say like, I will, my spirit is stronger than this. I'll make this through it. So yeah, I don't know. There's a big lesson in like the flesh dying spiritually. And most people think like, oh, that just means I just can't have any fun. It's like, no, dude, you need your spirit to rise above the things that are trying to consume you. You have to be stronger than them. Or else there's sure destruction. If you give in, there's sure destruction. And that is, I think, what this life is. It's just a battleground. That's what I've experienced.
Yeah. And as time goes on, we're seeing it more and more. And it's just getting darker and darker and heavier,
Definitely. And yeah, I'm excited that people are waking up to it, though. I'm excited that people are asking themselves the hard questions and being like, wait, why don't I have a connection with God? Like, what do I believe at the core? There's so many voices trying to influence us as a culture, as a people group, trying to separate us into identities and just like, dude, like you could fall for anything, but again, the spiritual principles hold true. Okay. All the things in the Bible are still true for this day, and so I'm really passionate about that and returning to the altar of consecration and holiness will literally help your life so much. Just you'll be happier. You're just not gonna have more peace, man.
Well, tell me about the future. What is coming up? You've got this album. Is the album done? Is it recorded?
So it's all recorded right now. It's getting mixed right now, mixed and mastered. So I'm hoping to hear some mixes come in November. Our guy's on tour right now, though, so he'll be back. And once we get it all in, we're getting some mixes rolling in. I'm really excited to start to plan all the content that's going to be released for all the singles. So choosing the singles, choosing the videos, the team, creating all the content, because I really want it to just be absolutely seamless and kind of on autopilot for the campaign. So that just requires a lot of groundwork. And I'm just not in a rush, though. Like, I'm not in a rush. I think that Stronger Than Death was so successful because I took my time. And it was just so funny because like people don't know what I'm sitting on. They just don't know. Same thing with Stronger Than Death. I was like, bro, when people hear these songs, it's going to change the game. And, all they had was my first record for like 4 years. And I was like, you guys, this record's so much better. And that's how I feel about this one. I still feel Stronger Than Death is a solid album. I just feel like this is a notch above, especially if you like heavy elements. But still, there's so much beautiful singing on this. There's songs with no screaming. And then there's songs with a lot of screaming. So I don't know. We'll see what people gravitate to. But I've always liked to ride that line when it comes to that. So to answer your question, all at the forefront of my mind is just to lay the groundwork out for this album. Not really too concerned about shows just yet. I really want touring to be just really meaningful. I want to have a new product to sell. I've been, touring off the last 2 albums for a couple years now. And I just, now that we're with Brian's label, there's kind of some restructuring I'm doing. We're trying to kind of shift into a mainstream market as well. Everyone's trying to do that. But it takes some groundwork to be done. So that's what I'm really focused on for this next year.
Well, I think you would be a great fit in the mainstream market. I love the name, the label title, Crossover.
Yes. I was like, what a coincidence that is, awesome. Right? I don't know if that was on purpose, but it's just like, man, like I feel that like I write music for that crowd more too anyway. Yeah. But I love my Christian fan base. Like I would be nothing without them. And they keep me strong in my faith. They help me remind me who I am. They remind me of my roots. And I was that Christian kid in youth groups going to rock concerts and being so inspired by these artists that claimed God on stage. And I was so proud, just so proud of it. Yeah. And the Bible says, be respectful when anyone asks you about your faith. And I just want to be ready for that. I want to be ready to have that answer for them if being asked. So, can't wait.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you on the road. Seriously. I go to tons of concerts. Hundreds of concerts. And when I saw you were on a cruise, weren't you? You played on I saw a video of you on a cruise ship, if I'm not mistaken.
I've sang on cruise ships, but not as Zahna. I'm trying to think. It might have been another band. I know Amongst the Giants were on a cruise ship tour.
I thought for sure you were. Okay, so it wasn't.
Yeah, that'd be awesome though.
Great. So yeah.
Very cool.
No, that would be awesome. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you out on the road. And Zahna, I tell you what, it has been refreshing hearing you talk and your passion and enthusiasm about your work. I know listening to Stronger Than Death, I keep looking over here because I have Spotify open and it's
yes.
here on this screen. I have screens all around me. So I have it over here. And it's such it's so good. I'm not a musician, but when I'm in video production, I do mix some of the soundtracks for the videos I put together and stuff. So I know kind of the work that goes into this. And it's not just guitar, bass, and drums and vocals. You're laying down a lot of layers of electronica influences in there, all kinds of stuff. I'm loving it. It's such a good.
Yes, I love dance music, and I've wanted to do some remixes with some of my songs, but dude, I'm just about the sound and the feeling it exudes. I love writing music. There are so many opportunities you can take to magnify your emotions, and the best music makes you sing with it. that's my goal, is like, I just want to create moments at concerts that make people open up. They just open up their spirit, open up the things you've been carrying, leave it at the altar of God. Like, let's scream this at the top of our lungs. Let's call him to heal us. Let's just worship him, you know, even in these songs that aren't directly worship songs. Like, I think concerts are just such amazing experiences to shed all that baggage and just remember joy and remember life, and music is in, you know, creating life with music, or meeting people where they're at in tragedy, and helping them just kind of like process that pain and that grief a little bit easier for them.
No, and that is so important. I remember seeing when I saw Love and Death in concert. I was there took my boys, and I was there with another dad, you know, and we're kind of standing in the back, and I noticed, I mean, it was a heavy song, but everyone had their hands raised and they're praising God. And I looked over at Chris, my buddy, and said, "Look at this. This is worship at volume 11. You know, this is great. My ears are bleeding, but people are still worshiping. You know, so it doesn't have to be awesome. You know, acoustic guitar or whatever. You can worship anywhere."
Yes. And those phrases and the singing, like, you know, like die for something. Like, I love that song because, you know, it says, I want to die for something. And like multiple people singing that, I feel like would be just so powerful, you know, like this unison, this one voice being like, if this is the end, I'm going to die for something, you know? And I think there's so much power in the voice, and just, we've got to just keep our eyes on God, man. Like, this is not our home, and we're not going to be here for long. So just cling to him, because that's where we're going. We're going to go meet with him after all this is said and done.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about your husband. Is he working on any new material for Crossover?
Yeah, so he goes under the name Nesdom now, and he's also under Crossover, and we just put out a joint song together called Joyride, where we're both singing on that, but he has another single coming out November 9th, which is my favorite track on the album, that's dropping in January, but November 9th, he's coming out with a new single called Plastic Crown, and I love that song so much, it's so groovy. But coming back to his album release, that's January, I think, 17th it's coming out. Okay. And it's 10 songs, and you guys are going to love it. I'm really proud of that album. We all got to work on it together and contribute writing to that. And I feel the emotion in his music so well. And I'm so proud of him, because he used to be a drummer, and nobody really knew how good he was at like singing or fronting a band or guitar playing, you know?
Right.
And with this album, he didn't do guitar playing, but he did all the drum tracking, and he sang all of it. And I got to coach him in the booth, and it was just like, some of the takes he gave us, I was like, why were you a drummer for so long and not a singer? Like, what? So I'm really excited that he's getting that, like, kind of like being introduced in a new way. And man, some of his vocal range on this new album is pretty incredible. So I hope people check it out. It's really, really worth it. And he's got pre-orders. He's going to have vinyls and cassettes coming out with CDs.
That's
yeah,
great.
you can go to nesdamusic.com and you'll find all his new merch line and hats and shirts and everything. And I really recommend people get ready for that album, because it's very good.
Okay, I got one more question for you.
Sure.
The hand crocheted keychains.
Yes.
Yeah. Who's making those?
So my friend Kathy, I actually went to high school with her, and she was always known in high school to be a really good artist. Well, she kind of followed me throughout the years. We reconnected back in 2019, I think, or something like that. We ended up living really close together, and she was just a fan of the music, and she would just make me little things here and there, or draw me, or like I would show her my unreleased demos. She'd be like, "Girl, that's so good," and like she's just such a force of creativeness. And so she crochets, and she would make little Zahna dolls for me on tour, and I would always sell out of them on tour. And she was like, "Girl, I want to make this little head doll of yours." I thought I had one in this room, but I guess not. And she, so she crochets those, she hand makes those, and we're just, we're like kind of just like buddies. We're also starting to develop a Legend of Zahna comic anime kind of book, and we finished writing season 1, and then I got on the label, and now I don't have time for it. So I'm like really sad. I was like thinking about doing a tangent like that, and instead of a new record, like coming out with a comic book series for a little bit to take a break from music and not be so burnt out. And then the label called and they're like, well, no, we want a new record. So I was like, okay, I got to put this one back on pause. But she is definitely a collaborator with me. Her name's Kathy, and she's very, very good at what she does.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I love that. I was looking through your merch stuff and I was like, oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, they're super cute.
That's great. Well, I hate to draw this to an end. I've had an absolute blast talking with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I love talking about stuff, especially when I can talk about, spiritual things and some outlets are a little more music focused and stuff. And I'm just like, let's talk about God. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're being in Heaven's Metal goes way back. The magazine started when I was in high school back in the 80s. I used to go to the Christian bookstores and take one off the news rack and sit down and read it while I was listening to demo tapes, back in the day. That's how you found your music. And so now I've been writing for them for, I think I'm going on 3 or 4 years now.
Oh, awesome.
And I enjoy doing these interviews because I've got to talk with some of my heroes that I grew up listening to, and then younger, newer artists like you. And this is fantastic. I think the readership is really going to dig your music if they haven't heard it already.
Thank you.
Yeah, when Rachel messaged our editor and said, does anyone want to do this interview? I was like the first one. I need to talk to her because
I'm so glad.
This album is fantastic. I didn't realize it's 36 minutes. I thought it was longer than it is. It is a musical journey that this album is. And I was listening to it on the way home. My wife and I were out driving, and Die for Something came on, and she doesn't normally like heavier music, and that song came on and she perked up. She was like, this is really good.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Talk to on Friday. She was like, oh, okay, cool. So
heck yeah. No, that's amazing, man. I can't wait for the new album. I'm like, I get so impatient because I'm like, oh man, to me, those songs are super old. Like I said, we wrote that in 2020 and it didn't come out until 2023. So the latest song, Pile of Pills, was actually written in 2021. So it's been a hot minute since anybody has heard anything recent from me. And we did it this summer. We wrote the new record in about, from June to August. I tracked everything in August, and I just can't wait for people to hear like what the new sound is like and just like how it evolves. It's not too different, okay? But there's definitely some things vocally that I was like, wow, that's way cooler than anything I've ever done. So yeah, I'm stoked for it, but I can't wait for people to hear it. Honestly, I think it's just, it's a little bit levels above. So yeah.
Well, you know what? As it comes closer and closer, and you release more information about it, let us know. We'll put it on our news section on the magazine. And as it gets closer to release, Zahna, if you don't mind, I would love to hook up with you again and talk about the release. And because right now things are a little nebulous as far as your plans go. And I would like to, when you get closer to touring and all that stuff, get all that information from you. And then just to check in and see how life is going for you.
Absolutely. I would love that. And definitely, I'm sure there will be many opportunities around the album. I'm going to be talking to a lot of people when it comes out. Definitely, I'll have them reach out to you. And if they don't, just message me or something. I'll see your message.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This has been awesome, Zahna. Hey, if you don't mind, let me pray for you. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Please do.
I'm not going to take my hat off because my hair's a mess and we're on video. So
you're good. You're totally fine. You're fine.
Okay. Lord, thank you so much for Zahna and her enthusiasm and her passion for you and her enthusiasm and passion for her music, Lord. She has been through so much, and it's awesome to see her coming out on the other side being so much stronger, Lord. And I just pray as she is heading off into this wild adventure with Crossover Records and her new album and her husband's new album. Lord, just bless their marriage, bless their relationship, and bless her ministry and his ministry as they carry on into the future. Lord, thank you so much for giving us incredibly talented musicians like Zahna that can appeal to to everyone across the board, Lord, and we really appreciate that, Lord. We thank you so much again for this conversation. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brad. I appreciate you having me on the show.
And it'll probably be dropping this Monday or Tuesday. I got to edit it all together and do all that fun stuff.
Sure. Just tag me in the story. I'll definitely reshare it. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
all right. Have a great night. Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.